The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
You are now tuned in to the PA Power Podcast, College Edition, featuring Pennsylvania natives Tristan Warner and Rob Waltko. PA Power Wrestling. PA Power Wrestling. Pennsylvania is wrestling.
Pennsylvania wrestling fans, you are now dialed into the PA Power Wrestling College Podcast. I'm your co-host, Tristan Warner, joined by Rob Waltko for Season 3, Episode 9. Rob, good to be back with you here, Episode 9.
Yeah, glad to be back. Hey, Tristan, remember last week we were talking about guys that like your styles just did or didn't mesh with. You brought up Kokesh. Selfishly, I could only think of guys that I had beaten. Do you remember going over that?
Oh, yeah, of course. Did you think of somebody in the last week?
Yeah, someone popped up. It's actually a guy you know pretty well. I'm not sure if he was in your wedding, but I know you mentioned that you guys are pretty tight friends. Joe Buddy from Old Dominion, guy I wrestled a few times. That he just had my number, and I don't know if you have a line on him. I'd like to get him on the show at some point, but that dude was just really tough for me to beat.
Joe Buddy, yeah, he was my teammate back in the day. Pretty unassuming guy. You know, you looked at him, you didn't really think that he would come out on the mat and be much, but that dude was strong. He had a strong grip, and he looked like he was pretty hard to score on. He was a couple weights above me, so I really only got to scrap with him maybe 2 or 3 times. But, yeah, Rob, from what you told me about him, sounds like he was pretty kind of just like a big gorilla out there, kind of hard to score on.
Yeah, I heard he really tore up the dance floor at your wedding, too.
Nah, he was not at my wedding. No, he didn't make the cut, but yeah, that's a name drop right there, Joe Buddy. That's been a few years.
So in all seriousness, let's get to our recap. Wasn't a whole ton going on this week. I think with finals going on, the Ironman really took a lot of precedence. I don't know if college teams schedule around that or if it's just finals or what. But the big one in PA was Lock Haven, a 19-15 win over Navy at Red Lion High School. They've done that a couple times. Great marketing by Lock Haven. These guys are really on the ball. I know that Carr hinted that next year Wisconsin's coming in his interview with Joe Youngblood, so that'd be a cool one to see. Definitely a high-profile team. Yeah, the duel's pretty chalk. Fellman, Shoup, Port, Clucker, Hazel all got wins. Clucker got a big pin. That was a huge difference. They also got wins over the weekend over Messiah, McDaniel, and Millersville, a.k.a. the 3Ms. But, yeah, Tristan, what did you think of that duel meet? I mean, I love the concept of it. Navy's not as high-profile a team as Arizona State, Rutgers, or they didn't wrestle Rutgers at a high school, but rather just in a big duel, or Wisconsin. But, I mean, do you like this idea? I know we've talked about it, but what's the buzz in your part of the state?
Yeah, I think it's cool. I think it's really cool that Lock Haven is kind of capitalizing on an area of the state where they've kind of found a pipeline, where they've had a lot of real success, like we talked about last week. Marsteller, Shoup, Perry, and Neff are all District 3 kids, and they've all been All-Americans for Lock Haven just in the last 5 years or so. So I think it's really cool that they're it's almost like they're giving back to the district and coming out and wrestling. Last year they had Arizona State, which is a big, drew a lot of fans, especially with Zahid Valencia in the lineup. Navy also, is a tough team that has ranked guys in national qualifiers, and, I think that hopefully this tradition continues. Not only that they keep coming back to District 3, but also just that college programs in general keep wrestling at high schools because, it gets more people involved. It gets more people that maybe don't go out on your average Sunday or Saturday and go watch a college match. Maybe they don't even have a program too close by to do that. But, when one comes to town and comes into their school district, they get to go experience that. I think that's just really good for the sport in general.
No, I'm with you, man. I really commend Lock Haven on their marketing efforts. They do a great job. The Hidley boys got back in the winning column this weekend. They both rolled versus App State. Hayden ended up beating Zovatoski 16-3. It was a 3-2 match at the one of the opens earlier this year. So Hayden definitely made some adjustments there, like we talked about, and got a big win. Dakota Gear over my guy Jake Woodley. Dakota's kind of my guy too. I've known him a long time. But they split takedowns. Gear got 2 escapes. I mean, Woodley's got to get off the bottom if he wants to beat guys like this. And Gear's pretty darn tough on the mat, so that's easier said than done. Upcoming, we have F&M taking on Gardner Webb and Presbyterian. I think those are both winnable duels for Franklin and Marshall, especially with a guy like Pelosi. I know Youngblood's a big fan of his. Says he's got great footwork, pretty good leg attacks. Probably need some bonus from him, but looking to make a statement here. Some EWL action or former EWL action. Bloom versus Lock Haven versus Clarion. Tristan, good to get these old EWL rivalries still going on in the MAC. What do you like in these dual meets?
Well, number one, I would say it's interesting that, these guys are EWL schools, but now they're competing for the MAC. So that's just kind of cool. I was, Old Dominion, my junior and senior year, we competed in the MAC. So these dual meets, they're the same old rivalry of PSAC schools, but they have a little bit of a different context this year. They're competing in a completely different context and in a conference, sorry. So, the results will vary a little differently in terms of how it impacts their season. But overall, I would say there's some good individual matchups here. Let's go ahead and dive into the Lock Haven and Clarion one, specifically at 125, Gramacki against Luke Werner. So, Rob, I don't know if you have any insight to this, but Luke Werner got his red shirt pulled last week and wrestled in the he wrestled in the match at Red Lion, and then the next day he didn't wrestle. Is that what happened?
He wrestled last week or 2 weeks ago versus Central Michigan, but didn't wrestle at Red Lion. So I'm not sure what happened there. The red shirt's pulled unless he got hurt, and they're going to get a medical now. But I have to assume he's wrestling this weekend. Side note, bummed out we're not going to see a Luke Warner Willie Gerard matchup. That was always a classic one last year, and I know Warner lost to him this year. Gerard seems to have his number, but shout out to Willie. Looking forward to getting him back on the lineup next year. But I think Gramacki really needs a win here, man. He's 0-2 on the year, or 0-4. Hasn't looked great. I mean, do you think he gets back on the winning track, or you think maybe he's a little burned out? 6 years is a long time to wrestle.
I don't know. I kind of have made a similar point about Zach Earl. Both those guys are coming back. It's really hard. I know from personal experience, actually, Clarion being the place, ironically, I tore my pec in the first tournament of the season in the finals of the Clarion Open my true sophomore year, and I missed the entire year. I think I was in a sling for like 4 or 5 months, and then, missed a whole year, didn't even get back on the mat till the next, late summer or fall. I know it's definitely hard to come back from an injury, so, Gramacki's had a long time that he was off the mat, so he's probably just a guy that needs a lot of mat time to get back to where he was. Werner's going to be a tough opponent for him to do that with, though, I must say. Assuming he's healthy. Like I said, if he got that red shirt pulled and then came in the lineup and then right after that, he lost a close match and then didn't wrestle again, I have to wonder if, maybe he aggravated an injury or maybe he's banged up a little bit. So I don't know if we'll see him out there, but assuming it is Werner out there, that's a tough match for Gramacki to try to get back on the horse. Yeah,
that's a big one for both those guys, really. 33, I like this one. DJ Fellman. This is in the Bloomsburg versus Lock Haven duel, but DJ Fellman versus Josh Mason. Mason's someone that we talked about on the episode that was lost. Thanks, Jeff. But Mason's tough, man. Kind of an unorthodox background. He went to Nebraska for a year, didn't wrestle, came back. He's at Bloom now. He's 9-5 on the year. Fellman started the year pretty slow, but he's 10-1 since Journeyman. So he's definitely picked it up. He's where we expect him to be. I think this could be an upset spot, though. I think this Mason kid's pretty tough. He's looked really good the last couple weeks. Shoup versus Orts from Clarion, national qualifier versus All-American. We'll see where Orts is at. Port and Zackrell have never wrestled. Got to think Zackrell does pretty well there, but Port had a nice big win last week. Wallabaugh from Clarion is 0-2 versus Segrist from Lock Haven, but Wallabaugh's a guy we've talked about, has a lot of talent. We'll see if he can kind of hone that in. And then another big one is 184. This is, again, Lock Haven versus Bloom, is Corey Hazel versus Allard. Hazel's 4-0 versus him, but Allard has lost 1 or 2 point matches every time. I know the Bloom coaches are pretty excited about Allard. Any of these matches really jump out to you, Tristan?
Yeah, last I looked, Allard, I think, is up to number 13 in Intermat's poll. That's pretty impressive. I don't think he started the year ranked, but he's had a good start to the season, and Hazel's a guy that's ranked right around that same mark. So if Allard's able to notch a win there, he's just going to keep climbing. That's a good one. Shoup against Orts. Sorry, that was a tongue twister. That should be a good one, too, just because Shoup, he didn't wrestle the first couple weeks. I don't know if he was hurt or what, but he's dropped a couple matches, a couple close ones, and he's looking to try to separate from the pack here and get back to where he was last year. And Orts is definitely a tough opponent, too. An NCAA qualifier 2 years ago, so that could be a good one.
We have our Drexel Dragons heading west to the land of Azevedo. They're wrestling Stanford and Cal Baptist. Big match there is Jarrell taking on undefeated freshman Shane Griffith. We'll see where Jarrell is. Griffith is very, very tough, but Jarrell, former national qualifier, he's got the edge and experience here. Pitt takes on Maryland. Bucknell takes on Lock Haven. And then another big one with another Pennsylvania local team is Edinburgh. They're taking on George Mason, WVU, and Hofstra this week. First one I want to talk about, man, Ty Varndell, my guy, who I've been pretty high on, taking on Jones from Saucon Valley, who's now at George Mason. Jones had won that match 7-3 in the state finals. Did you get to watch that match, Tristan? I know you're a big fan of the state finals and the state tournament. Do you remember watching that?
I didn't see it last year. No, I've seen the state finals most years, but I did not see it last year.
Yeah, I know Jones won that pretty handily, but Varndell has had the better freshman year so far. That'll be interesting to see how far he's come. 74 in that quad. You got Jacob Oliver versus Sage Heller from Hofstra. Heller actually beat Oliver at CKLV. Oliver's been kind of up and down this year. This is when he probably needs to win. If he definitely wants to get a spot to nationals, has to get one back on this guy. Then Noah Adams, who's undefeated for West Virginia, taking on Dylan Reynolds from Edinburgh. All pretty solid matches. Again, not a ton of action this week, really of note, but certainly plenty to watch. Tristan had a pretty cool idea, though. In lieu of us not having much to talk about or review, Tristan wanted to go over the all-decade team. Can you kind of take it away and let us know what you were thinking here, Tristan, and start getting into some of the picks?
Yeah, so Rob, it sounds like next week you and Dyson are actually going to maybe step on the podcast and preview Midlands and the Scuffle. So with this being my last podcast of 2019, I got to thinking and I realized this is actually my last podcast of this decade, because starting in 2 weeks, it'll be, the 2020s. We'll look back on that decade as the 20s decade someday in the long future. So I looked back from the year 2010 to 2019, and I thought there's been so many PA wrestlers that have accomplished so much. Let's dive through each weight and just headline, some of the. We're going to go through each weight. We're going to pick at least one guy to headline as kind of the PA native member of the all-decade team. And then at each weight, we've also listed, anywhere from 3 to 5 honorable mention picks. Most of these guys are guys that All-American multiple times or had a really standout career. A couple of them are still current guys that are continuing to build their legacy but have already got on the podium a couple times, and they're names that, PA wrestling fans will remember for a long time. So let's go ahead and jump into the all-decade team starting at 125.
Yeah, take it away, Tristan. You did a lot of the legwork on this. I'm curious to get your thoughts at this weight.
Okay, so at 125, there was some stiff competition here. You got a couple national champs and a couple multiple All-Americans, but even though he's a current guy, Spencer Lee, already a 2-time national champ as a freshman and a sophomore, and now he's ranked number 1 in the country again. So he's somebody that could conceivably be a 4-time national champ. So in my opinion, he's got to be the top guy here on the all-decade team, and even though he's just a junior. Also did that without redshirting, I might add. That's impressive. Honorable mention picks, Nico Megaludis, a national champ for Penn State. I think he went, 3-2-1-2 or something like that. Maybe not in that order, but national champ to close off the career.
I think he was 2-2-3-1, maybe.
That sounds more right. Regardless, he was in the top 3 all 4 years, and he was a national champ. Darian Cruz, also a national champ for Lehigh, and I think a 2-time All-American. Another honorable mention, one of my favorite guys on this list, Zeke Moisey. He was in the NCAA finals as a true freshman, made quite the run as a 15 seed, and then snuck back into the podium with an 8th place finish a couple years later, and then after transferring to Nebraska. And then also Ethan Lezak from Minnesota. He was a national finalist, lost to Cruz in an all-District 11 NCAA final, and then went on to All-American, I believe, twice more, and one of those was at 133. Anyone else at 25 that I'm overlooking here, Rob?
No, that seemed pretty good, man. I mean, this is a great list. You have 3 guys that have won national titles, 2 others that have been in the finals, and a couple of current guys I think could really get there too. Jumping into 133, though, you have the king of this weight, I think, is Jordan Oliver. Tough to rank him. He spent 1 year at 149, but he was, I think, 4th, 1st, and 2nd at 133, and really kind of a debatable number 2 with that call versus Stieber. You got AJ Shoup coming in next from Edinburgh, 3-time All-American. Friend of the program, Mason Beckman, 2-time All-American from Lehigh. 2-time All-American from Lehigh, Scott Parker as well. Luke Pletcher placed twice at 133, and then Jordan Conway as well was an All-American. What do you remember about these guys, Tristan? Because all kind of different styles. Oliver, killer on his feet. AJ Shoup, just a monster on top. Pletcher, obviously his story's ongoing, but just knows how to win matches. Like, who do you remember here? Any big memories from these guys?
Well, honestly, the first thing that jumped off my mind here, and I think you'll be surprised to hear this too, is because it's more of what I didn't remember. Jordan Conaway was a 2-time All-American, according to my research, unless I read that wrong. So that just kind of surprised me because I don't remember that, but good for him. Jordan Oliver, obviously a beast. He's been his entire career kind of untouchable at times. Bounced around some weights, but did the most of his damage at 133. So I had to put him number 1. AJ Schopp was a stud. Probably for years, people will remember his shin wizard tilt as well as his tilts on top. Just an absolute beast on top. And from that, when guys shot that sweeper low single, he was going right to that shin wizard tilt. I'd say he's one of the pioneers of that move at a high level. I mean, that's a move I hit a lot in college, but people aren't going to remember me doing it. But AJ Schopp, people are going to remember that was kind of his signature move. So Beckman obviously was a stud. He was my former podcast partner on here. And then Scotty Parker also, I think, placed 7th or 8th twice. So he was a solid guy for Lehigh. And Pletcher, have him at 33. He's wrestled his first 3 years there. He's got on the podium a few times. He might end up, capping off his legacy as a national champ at 41. But, looking back through the decade, technically, if he's winning a title at the end of this year, it would be in 2020. So figured he had to go in at 133.
No, I think that's fair. As it currently sits, I'd call Pletcher a 33-pounder for, I guess, dynasty or legacy purposes.
Yeah, I agree. Let's bump up to 41. It's a little thinner here at 41. Still some good guys, but not as deep and not as no national champs here. Mitchell Port, as close as you get. I think he was in the finals twice. I think he lost to Maple and Stieber, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
But is that right? Okay, but still, I think 3 or 4-time All-American Port was. Stud for Edinburgh. Still a coach now at West Virginia, so good kid. And then Evan Henderson from North Carolina, maybe somebody that people don't remember as well just because I think his last year he didn't – I might be wrong, but I think he did an All-American his senior year. But his sophomore and junior year, he was pretty dominant. He had a wicked crossface cradle, pinned a lot of good guys, racked up a lot of back points. He was a 2-time All-American. He's out of the Pittsburgh area, I think United High School, and then maybe eventually transferred to Kiski Prep. You're a Pittsburgh guy. You can correct me on that.
Yeah, he was Kiski Prep. Yeah, he's Kiski Prep. I'll be honest. I'm not sure where he's from originally. Let me look it up real quick.
I want to say it was United.
Yeah, you're probably right. Or you could be right. It's like right between like Blairsville and Johnstown. It's on like the very edge of Westmoreland County. It's really out there. Like it's closer to Johnstown than Greensburg. So United sounds about right. But yeah, he's still wrestling, man. I mean, he wrestled in the U.S. Open, had a couple big wins. He's wrestling in the whatever that was a couple weeks ago, and he's wrestling the Open this week. Crazy how long his career has gone. Okay,
let's bounce up to 149. Pretty obvious pick here, Zane Rutherford, Penn State. Got to be the top dog. 3-time national champ. Won one of them at 41 and then 2 at 49. Am I right, Rob? Fact check me there.
That sounds. I think he won all of his at 149. He went 41 redshirt, then 49 the next 3 years.
Oh, you're right. Okay. He got 5th at 41 and then bumped up and won all 3 at 49. That's right. Okay. Let's see if we can remember who he beat in the finals. Sorensen, Mays, and Perry?
Sorensen, Perry, and they beat Levon Mays in his junior year.
And then Solomon Chishko from Virginia Tech. He's a Can Mac guy out of the Whippeal. Took 6th twice, I believe. My teammate Chris McCarty beat him for 5th one year when I was covering that match. But a solid career for Chishko. And also Mitch Minotti from Lehigh. He was a 2-time All-American. He placed once at 57 and once at 49, but I think he wrestled most of his career at 49. And also we had less guys here, so I slotted him in.
No, all good guys. I mean, Rutherford obviously was an animal. Chisco was obviously a blue chip coming out. Had a really nice career. Got kind of derailed by injuries. So, like, as great as he was, I don't think we ever really saw him at 100%, which is really saying something for the career he had. And then Minotti, I mean, I think he was good coming out of high school. He actually went to a Clarion camp. My brother told me before, like, anyone knew who Minotti was. He's like, this kid's a stud. I really hope Clarion gets him. And he ends up being just lights out at the national tournament. So, yeah, I wonder what those last 2 guys are doing, though, man. Chisco and Minotti, you haven't heard a whole lot about them. They must just be regular working stiffs like the rest of us. 57, we have at least one legend here, man. Jason Nolf, 3-time champ, 2-time All-American James Fleming, All-American Walter Peppelman from Harvard. Michael Kemmer, I guess technically a two-time All-American. He's up at 74 now. And then Hayden Hidley, NCAA finalist. Man, this is a pretty stacked weight. Has there been a better weight than 57 yet, Tristan?
57 stacked. I'd say 25 is probably the best just because you had 3 national champs. But, Fleming was a two-timer. Peppelman actually got 8th twice, so he was a two-timer. And then Kemmer and Hidley are 2 guys that have yet to cement their legacy. But I'd say easily those guys could both end up being national champs. So, it could end up having 3 national champs at this weight as well.
Did you ever get your hands on Fleming?
Regrettably, yeah. I would say more like he got his hands on my throat.
Yeah, I see him. He coaches out this way. I mean, he's my brother's teammate too, but I don't know a lot of guys that said they enjoyed wrestling him.
No, it wasn't really wrestling. It was more like getting your head held underwater and trying to survive. And now that I'm a little.
Was that high school or college?
That was high school. I know I'm a little bitter sounding, but that move is now outlawed, isn't it? So I don't know how I feel about that. That's not even a move that you can hit anymore, I believe.
So do you say you want to get your hands back on him?
No, I don't say that, but I just remember thinking while I was wrestling him that there's no way this is a wrestling move. There's no way this is a move that should be a wrestling move. It's just, it's like getting your head held underwater, and now it's just a little.
It's like a vice grip on your.
Yeah, it's just a little too little, too late now. But I wasn't his only victim, that's for sure. He got 5th or 6th twice, maybe 7th. So 2-time All-American.
Yeah. I mean, he's
the snapper.
He was tough, man. He knew how to squeeze people's heads off. Yeah, he's I got some stories about him I could tell off air. Nothing too bad. Just I guess one in general. One time at Waller's wrestling camp, Snapper got like 6 pieces of chicken for lunch, and he threw half of it away, and Waller made him take it out of the garbage and eat it because he didn't want him wasting food. And for anyone out there thinking it was child abuse, it was like at the very top of the rim, still on the plate. But I'll never forget that and learn not to take too much at Waller's camps anymore. Why'd you jump into 65, Tristan? We got some real recent studs, really, looking at this one. Yeah,
so your guy at the top is Vincenzo Joseph. He's first. What is he? First, second? Yeah, okay. So he beat Imar twice in the finals in similar fashion with that inside trip pin, and then fell last year in kind of a surprising match to
Mekhi Lewis.
Thank you. Yep. Brain's a little dead today. And then now he's looking to cap off his senior
Snapper
season. Yeah, Snapper. I think I was reliving those near-death encounters and cut off oxygen to my brain. But nonetheless, Joseph looking to get a title in his senior year. Could be a 3-timer. Also, Chance Marsteller, guy who had a tough path to his finish, but I would say ultimately a good story. Really came out better on the other end after transferring from Oklahoma State. 2-time All-American for Lock Haven, finishing 4th and 3rd, I believe. And then Josh Shields from Arizona State. He All-American once at 57, once at 65, and now he's a senior going for his 3rd All-American honor.
Yeah, it's a strong group. I like Chenzo's chances to win again this year, and I'll be interested to see if he keeps competing through after college. He's a smart guy. He probably has a lot of options for him in and outside of wrestling, so we'll see how that goes. We had a little bit of a dilemma, listeners, at 174. I thought that our number 1 should be Tyler Wilps. Tristan went with Mike Evans from Iowa. Since Tristan really did all the legwork on this, I conceded. But, Evans, 3-time All-American at Iowa. I think he was, 6'6", which kind of felt like, I don't know, kind of natural with his demonic personality. People really didn't like his mustache, I don't think. And then Wilps was a 2-time All-American and got in the finals and lost a bit of a controversial match versus Matt Brown. What do you remember about these guys, Tristan? I remember Evans doing a lot of flexing when he won 3-2 matches, and obviously I remember Wilps losing in the finals to Matt Brown. But I mean, I liked watching both these guys compete a lot. Evans was he had a lot of personality, especially compared to a lot of the Iowa guys that he was around.
Yeah, there's a lot I could say about both these guys. I mean, I had a lot of close encounters with both of them. Evans was my high school teammate for 3 years here at Cumberland Valley before he transferred to Blair. And then in college, me and him were actually in the same bracket at NCAAs my sophomore year. I lost my first match. He lost his second match, and we crossed, and we nearly wrestled each other in the consies, which could have been very interesting. But I ended up losing, and then he ended up losing to the same guy, Ben Jordan, who went on a run, lost his first match and won 5 in a row and ended up placing. So didn't end up ever crossing paths. Talked to him a few times. just briefly here since we've graduated, but he's a guy that his three sixth-place finishes at NCAAs don't really show the true picture, I would say, of what his college career was. I mean, I would say every year that he was in college, he was a title contender. I think he beat guys like Matt Brown before who won a title, and he had Chris Perry all but defensive pinned that one NCAA semi where he, if it was the rules today where it's like that Dean Heil rule where, the guys drape over the top and get put in the danger position, Evans had Perry there for, I want to say, 45 seconds, and he was flat. I think a lot of refs would have called a pin there. Who knows? I think he was better than his 3 sixth-place finishes say, but I mean that says a lot because he's a 3-time All-American, a lot more than I can say. And then Wilps, he's a guy I beat in the state semis in high school, and then 2 years later I was wrestling him in the finals of the Clarion Open, and I ruptured my pec, which is one of the rarest injuries apparently. They didn't even have a protocol written up anywhere publicly for any kind of athletic trainer to do rehab for. It was such a rare injury. So I would say just a sheer testament to Tyler Wilp's hamstring strength, sprawling out on a single and rupturing my pec. I was out for a year. So he ended up, making huge strides in college, became a 2-time All-American and a national finalist, and really a finalist that lost on a locked hands call. So, I mean, that match, that review goes the other way, and Wilps gets to wrestle that match out in overtime against Matt Brown. It's possible to say Tyler Wilps could have been a national champ. So I know that's only 2 guys for that weight, but I have a lot of personal ties to both of them. So, and both of them were great wrestlers, I'll say that.
Yeah, and Evans, that's a great way to put it, man. Like he maybe didn't wrestle his best at the NCAAs, but it seemed like it was him, Brown, and Logan Storley were always kind of back and forth. And Robert Kokesh, they were the same year. They were all kind of back and forth with one another, and Perry was the year before them. But he beat everyone on any given day, so he was definitely great, and he's doing a heck of a job down at Campbell. I know that they're really a program on the rise, and I'm sure he has a lot to do with that. 84, we have a couple of national champs. Ed Ruth, 3-timer. Steve Bozak, who throttled me a few times in college. He was an animal. 2-timer. We got Sheptock and Brown, who were in the finals, and Zach Zavatsky, who was an All-American. 2-time All-American, rather. Zavatsky's he's one of the guys that I thought he's kind of similar to an Evans, where he had great regular seasons, maybe didn't have the best NCAA tournaments, but was really, really good his whole career. And then the other guys kind of speak for themselves. Did you ever wrestle any of these guys? I know you and Bozak are pretty good buddies, right?
Yeah, I grew up with Bozak at State College when I lived there in elementary school and middle school for a couple years, so I grew up with him. Ed Ruth was my high school workout partner for a long time at Iron Eagle Wrestling Club. Me, him, Mike Evans, Joey Napoli, some big-name guys, Bryce Bustler, that was all kind of part of that club. So, Ruth in high school, kind of before he was the big name that he is today, our club coach used to offer us $5 if we could get out of his cradle grip, if we could just break his lock, and I don't think anyone ever did it, myself included. So, yeah, I grew up with him. Sheptock, I wrestled a couple times in high school. One time of the cement duels in Northampton, I think I had a 2 or 3 point lead on him with like 10 seconds left, and he did some weird move and took me down. I think he put me on my back at the edge of the mat with like literally 3 seconds left. So Sheptock always found a way to win. That guy was a beast. Nate Brown, our interview guest. Nate is actually texting me as we're speaking, telling me that me and him wrestled at the NHSCA duels and that I beat him. But I'll be honest with you, I remember pretty much every match of my life, and I have zero recollection of that. So I don't know if he's just a late night for old Nate and he's needs to get to bed, or if maybe I'm the one who needs to get to bed. I'm not sure.
We talked to him later. I don't know, man. I think Snapper might have thrown you off your game.
And then lastly, Zavatsky. I never wrestled him. He's way younger than me, but my younger brother, TC, beat him at the finals at King of the Mountain, I think, in high school. So, he ended up getting super good in college, got way bigger too, 184-pounder. But, all those guys, once again, that way. It's crazy how much wrestling we do, Rob, and how much we've been, we've been in the mix here. I know all these guys. I have personal ties to pretty much every single one of them.
Yeah, no, I know obviously Nate very well. Bozak, I know him in passing. I don't know if he remembers beating my ass. Edit that out, Jeff. I don't know if he remembers beating me up a few times, but he's a good dude. I always like talking to him. The heavier weights were a little bit limited. Quentin Wright, multiple-time national champ. Matt Wilps, national finalist. Then at heavyweight, we got Mike McMullen, who was third, second, third, I believe. Only 4 losses at the NCAA tournament. Man, Quentin, he really was the catalyst for Penn State winning that first title, and just an awesome dude. I mean, he's a really nice kid, and I always liked his style. I remember being on teams with him and being like, man, this guy does not look fun to wrestle because he can pin you from anywhere. I'm sure you grew up with him a little bit too, right?
Quentin Wright, yeah. He was a couple years older than me, but when I was in state college, he was in state college, and then he eventually moved over to Bald Eagle area for high school. But he was a guy I never got anywhere close to wrestling just because it would have been ridiculous. I was like a, 10-year-old chubby kid who was losing to third-year wrestlers, and he was coming back with his Tulsa National Giant Eagle trophy. So it would have been just a complete ridiculous waste of both of our times. But, at Nittany Lion Wrestling Club, he was always the big stud that was kind of, the guy who was like demonstrating the moves to even the college guys. It was ridiculous. So, he had an outstanding career from the time he was like 6 years old all the way through college.
One thing I want to say about the Wilps boys, because they're from Char Valley, which is just west of Pittsburgh. So neither of them were really great their first couple years in high school, and then they had like a big jump their junior year, and then even a bigger jump their senior year. It had a lot of momentum going into college, but I always admired that. My teammate Carl DeShaunis used to wrestle Matt in high school, and we would be like, oh, you got to wrestle like that blockhead from Char Valley that's like terrible, but he's going to keep wrestling you hard, and you're going to beat him like 16-8, right? Basically get like 2 takedowns late. And then all of a sudden, like he's really good a year or two later. So I don't know. I have a soft spot for those guys that maybe aren't all-stars growing up, but kind of find their way as they go. Yeah,
and those guys were just so strong, both Matt and Tyler. I remember wrestling Tyler, like I said, in high school, and then just compared to 2 years later wrestling him in college, it was like a completely different guy. He was so strong. His defense got so good. In high school, I think I shot a couple low singles and got in easy, and then in college, I couldn't even touch his leg. It was, it was like wrestling a totally different guy. He really developed in college, both of them. Big, strong dudes, just hard to score on and just super good in their positions.
Yeah, so let's jump into our next segment. What do you got for us, Tristan?
Did you finish off the heavyweight, 285?
Oh, yeah, I mentioned Mike McMullen. He ended up his career 3-3, 2-3. I was teammates with his brother. Great. Both those guys are great. Just great family. They're out of Easton, PA, wrestled at Wyoming Seminary. But, Mike's he's a different dude, man. He's real sharp. I think he's a little bit edgier than most wrestlers, but just a great guy. And his brother Joe's doing a great thing with Shot Sled right now.
Yeah, I actually wrote an article for Win Magazine on them not too long ago, the Shot Sled. They sent me a free T-shirt, so shouts out to them, and it seems like a real good product. I was a little surprised, Rob, before we jump into our next part, that there wasn't more All-Americans at heavyweight from Pennsylvania. It just seems like off the top of your head in the last 10 years you could think of some, but when I went through the brackets and the results, McMullen was really all I could find. I mean, Jordan Wood last year, and he'll probably end up being on this list again. But besides that, even the guys that Penn State's had, they've had guys like Nevels, who's from California, and Jimmy Lawson from New Jersey, and Kassar from New Jersey. So it was kind of harder to find PA guys than I thought for heavyweight.
Yeah, I was thinking about that not long ago, and really out of the WPIAL, like we haven't produced a whole lot. We got Reed and Furman up there right now. Neither of them has really lit the world on fire just yet, but yeah, Pennsylvania just doesn't seem to produce the same level of heavyweight as they do other weights.
Yeah, that being said, let's get on to our last segment here. Going hand in hand with the all-decade team, Rob, I figured it would be fun to just reminisce over some of the best matches we remember of the last decade. So, I mean, obviously, our brains automatically go to the NCAA tournament, so that's kind of where I drew all of my matches from. I'm sure there were a ton of great dual meet matches and, tournaments at like the Scuffle and Midlands and stuff that were amazing matches, some of them featuring probably all PA guys even. But, it's really hard to comb through 10 years of that just to prepare for this segment. So I just kind of drew quickly off of some of the matches that really jumped out to me from the NCAA tournament over the last 10 years. And I'll start it off. My very first one, my favorite one, hands down probably my favorite match of all time, I will say, and I don't know if it ever will be dethroned, was Zeke Moisey's 38-second pin over Thomas Gilman in the 2015 NCAA semis. There's just so many things to this story that really put it up there for me. First, I would say Zeke coming in a 15 seed as a true freshman, PA boy. I don't think very many people were expecting much out of him. He not only upset, I think it was Nashawn Garrett was the 2 seed. He pulled a couple other upsets on his way. And then he gets to the semis against Gilman, who, whatever you want to say about him off the mat, might be the nicest kid in the world, and it might all be an act, but his antics just drove me absolutely nuts. I was not a fan. And, watching Zeke, I mean, I don't even know what word you would say other than the total opposite of backing down from someone you're supposed to lose to. Just went out there, single leg, took him down, pushed him away, and cut him like he was wrestling his little brother. And then did the same thing again, cradles him, pins him in 38 seconds. That was the loudest I've probably ever been in an arena. Let's just put this in context real quick. I was sitting in the crowd right after going 0-2 and my wrestling career ending, so I was in pretty bad spirits at this time. And this is still my favorite match of all time. So that really says something.
Yeah, I mean, that one is that's a total barn burner. I mean, that tournament for Moisey was just awesome. And, that match is going to live on forever. That's got to be one of the biggest upsets in NCAA history. I have a couple, Penn State guys. Imar losing, to Vincenzo in the finals with that inside trip. I was sitting in my old apartment and went ballistic. I was so pumped up. And Nolf beating him in the dual meet in Illinois when Imar was still undefeated. A couple of my buddies and I actually debated going down to that dual meet, and we were going to wear Katanning High School shirts. That's where Nolf is from, and we were like, yeah, we're just going to make a statement that we're there to watch Nolf and support Nolf. And watching him just beat the crap out of Imar, and it was really the only time he ever beat him. He's lost to him a bunch of times since, but that just blew my mind, and it was really cool. I think it was like a Saturday afternoon that happened. Both awesome matches, and really cool stuff from a couple of WPIAL guys.
You got something against Imar.
I actually love Imar. That's why I actually almost said, I feel bad saying this, but watching a couple of WPIAL guys beat on the champ like that was pretty cool.
Moving on, Steve Bozak getting a title in the finals over Quentin Wright. I mean, I like both those guys. I kind of grew up with both of them, but Bozak was a close personal friend, and honestly, it felt like Wright he'd already won a title. He won a title the next year, so I almost felt like he had his day. I was happy to see Bozak, who's a great kid, who was one of my guys I grew up with, win a national title for Cornell. I feel like he's one of those guys you probably look back on, and some people are probably thinking, Bozak was a national champ? I don't even remember that. But he had an awesome college career that people probably might not even remember. I think he was a 3-time All-American. He got third or fourth twice and then won it. So won it his junior year, I think it was. So awesome career for him, and that was a great match to see him get that title.
No, yeah, he really underrated career. I think he's surrounded by Ruth and Wright and all those guys, but Bozak certainly had his share of moments. One you had listed from last year, that Nolf had the semis. I actually watched that match the other day. Crazy match. Takedown waved off in the first, and then Heidley was pretty close to one in the second, or in the third rather. Yeah, that was a tight one, man. I like both guys a lot. It was tough for me to watch. To some degree, because I don't like to see either of those guys losing, but that was a good choice, Tristan. I'm really hoping Heidley can punch through and get that title this year, though. Yeah,
me too. Obviously, a huge fan of the Heidley boys, so best of luck to them. I think Hayden's still got plenty of time to really cement his legacy on this list. The last one I thought of just off the top of my head was the All-PA District 11 final between Darian Cruz and Ethan Lezak a few years ago at 125. Not only was it a good match won by Cruz, but not only two PA boys in a final representing two totally different programs, but guys that really grew up in the same backyard. I think somebody even right around that time posted a picture on Twitter of a screenshot of a youth wrestling bracket. I want to say it was like in an 8 and under division tournament of those two wrestling each other at like the Whitehall tournament or something random like that. So, I mean, that just kind of puts in perspective when you think about it. Like, some of these, Rob, you're a big youth coach. Sometimes I work out with youth guys. Think about these matches you see of two good kids. Like, you never in a million years think this is going to be a future NCAA final right now. If somebody would have said that to those young guys or their parents, they probably would have been flattered, but didn't really think that was necessarily going to 100% come true. So, honestly, I just thought that was a really cool thing to have those two guys wrestling it out for NCAA title.
And what we're not encouraging is for youth parents out there to cut your kids down 10 pounds so you can win the Whitehall Youth Tournament. And just because you win that doesn't mean you're going to be in the NCAA finals. But to Tristan's point, it is cool when you see those types of matches. Guys have just been really good for a long time. It's pretty unique. So Tristan, what do you think we get old Nate Brown on the call here?
Let's dial him up. I'm excited to talk to Nate. It's a little blast from the past for us here.
Cool, let's do it. All right, now we're joined with Nate Brown. Nate was a 2-time All-American national finalist from Lehigh. I actually knew Nate as he was growing up. He's from Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, where I went to school, and we're fortunate enough to have him on this week. Nate, how you doing, man?
Doing well, guys. How you been? It's last of the bat. Rob and Tristan Warner did a couple. Tristan, what was the name of the club we used to go to NHSCA with?
Wayne Danger.
That's right.
The Scooby-Doo singlets.
Yep. Heck yeah, man.
Those things are still famous to this day.
So, Nate, jumping right into it, how did you get your start into wrestling? Was your old man a wrestler? Did you come from a power program where you grew up, or what really put you or got your interest in the sport?
Yeah, so I grew up in District 4 PA, so D4 boys shout out. There's plenty of those guys out there. It's small school Pennsylvania down in the middle of PA on Route 80, and the wrestling out there is strong for a small area. My old man was the assistant wrestling coach on the varsity team, and at that time, Bucknell that was right after Bucknell had dropped their program. And so it was, high school wrestling was kind of all I really knew and all I kind of aspired to, going up to Williamsport for the districts every year. And that was kind of what one thing led to another. I just was born onto a mat.
Nate, kind of piggybacking off of Rob's question, how did growing up in the state of Pennsylvania specifically help you develop your wrestling into your high school and college career? I mean, like you said, me and you were on teams going to NHSCA. I know you were a guy that's been to a bunch of different clubs and had, a ton of great workout partners. How would you say, just growing up in the Keystone State, how did that really set the tone for your wrestling career?
I think one thing that's reflecting back on as you grow through the sport is how tough it is, especially for little guys, right? For youth and for your middle school teams. I think that delayed gratification of continuing to work, because Pennsylvania is so deep, provides. I think it challenges a lot of PA guys from an early age, where you got to deal with failure and growth, because the only way to overcome those failures is to grow. And I think that's one of the unspoken things about why Pennsylvania does so well at the college level, is because kids learn how to compete and then learn from those competitions as they grow through. And to your point about clubs, I grew up through a club out in central Pennsylvania. It was called Union County Wrestling Academy, which then turned into Bison when Bucknell came back, turned into Bison Wrestling Club. And then that is what is Bison Legend. When Ian took over as a club coach there, he changed the name to Bison Legend. That was actually started in a church back out in Mifflinburg, Pennsylvania, by the Lynch family. If Adam Lynch is on staff at Penn State, his dad started the club with Frank Reber way back when, and Derek was a wrestler at Penn State and a state champion at Lewisburg.
You mentioned the competitive nature of youth wrestling in Pennsylvania. Do you have any funny stories of dads going nuts, or kids cutting a bunch of weight to wrestle you or run from you as a kid? Like anything that pops into your mind? Because being a youth coach, I see that stuff all the time. It just, you shake your head, but you also have to laugh half the time.
Yeah, I mean, there was one I remember where I was wrestling at the PJWs, and my dad, I'll never forget it. His vein in his neck was popping out, and it looked like a damn caterpillar. And it is funny now, Rob, looking at it, because as you progress through the sport, the youth stuff really, the accolades, the winning, the stuff, the being on the Team PA stuff, it really doesn't matter. And I know that's something that Dave Hoffman, who I coach with down at Team Renegade, we really try to inspire into our guys that the winning at the youth and middle school level, it's nice, but if you're not learning the lessons along the way, what's the point of being in the sport?
No, I totally agree. And I had a talk with the kids I coached yesterday where a couple guys had bad practices and they were tearing up a little. And I said, hey, bad news, bud. You're going to get taken down tomorrow too, and Wednesday and Thursday and the next tournament you go to. It's just part of it. And you have to embrace it, not get worked up about it. And, I'm not one of these coaches that's going to scream at a kid for giving up a takedown. It's just, hey, get better and learn from it.
Yeah, for sure.
Nate, let's fast forward through you were a big time success in high school, coming out of Lewisburg. How'd you end up at Lehigh? What was it about the Mountain Hawks that drew you there?
So I actually almost committed to Cornell. I was really, really close to committing to Cornell. And then my first official was to Lehigh. And so I went down, and I had a natural connection with Coach Hughes, because John Hughes' twin brother coached the Benton Tiger Wrestling Club where I would go for freestyle training in the spring. So there was a familial connection there with being from back where I was from, and really want to start to get to know Coach Santoro, the type of man he is, and his beliefs. And I mean, I don't know anyone that has anything bad to say about him. And there are a lot of people that, especially in the recruiting game, can get pretty dirty. And that was something that stuck out to me, that nobody ever said anything negative about Coach Santoro. And so I went on my visit, and I had that feeling in my gut that people talk about of like, this is where I'm supposed to be. I had a visit lined up with Penn State the next weekend. Kale was in my house a couple, mid-July, whatever it was, 5th, 6th, somewhere in there. And I canceled those visits. I said, I want to go to Lehigh.
You said you clicked with the staff. I mean, what about them jived with you, or do you have any examples of how they helped with your development, or maybe they approach it a different way than other coaches maybe do?
Yeah, I really think that if you and I think guys that have gone through and wrestled through college can you see it as from a different perspective. So my perspective now as a 27-year-old versus a 17-year-old trying to figure the process out is pretty stark, because I think as you gain more and more life experience, you start to smell what's fishy, and where some programs, listen, you're going to win, and if you don't win and produce, you're going to move to the side. And that was Coach Santoro. I remember my parents, they complimentary things to say about the Penn State coaching staff as well, where they were confident about the men that Penn State was trying to make. But specifically with Coach Santoro and Coach Dillon, they just really trusted that they wanted the best for me as a man. And that's not everywhere, and that's like an ugly truth that no one wants to talk about, is there are programs that see high school stars as ways for them to make more money. And that's a really hard and ugly thing to say, but I think if you talk to people after they've been through the process, there's some reality there. And that's not necessarily even a knock on that college coach, because that's how they feed their family. And so at some point you need to produce for them. Otherwise they're going to be out of an occupation. But Coach Santoro, and I know because I've seen it, right, and I've lived it, and I still have a relationship with all of those guys that's meaningful and important. And it wouldn't have mattered if I was an All-American or not. Coach Santoro is just that type of man.
That's awesome. By all accounts, we hear a lot of the same stuff from the Lehigh alums and current wrestlers that we interview. Nate, coming out of high school, obviously you were a big recruit, state champ, but I would say, looking back on your career, I would say that you even exceeded probably what the potential that, the guys who do the rankings for high school would say. And honestly, I feel like that's kind of a similar pattern with a lot of guys from Lehigh. What would you say, if you could just name a couple things from your college career, what would you say were some of the biggest reasons for how you were able to accomplish that?
Yeah, I think that a couple things you got to look at is, if you look at Lehigh's track record, it's like sneaky good with how many guys they're put into the finals. Like Penn State runs away with it, and then you have Iowa and Oklahoma State, but Lehigh's in that like 4th and 5th range. If you look over like the past 10 years, the number of NCAA finalists, I think there's a couple things to that. I attribute one, just phenomenal workout partners, right? When I came through, you had All-Americans and Brandon Hatchett, Joe Kennedy, Robert Hamlin, Zach Ray I even rolled around with once in a while. And those were the guys that were older than me. And then below me, you had really some freaking really good studs. The Cutlers of the world. Even I'd roll around with Minotti. And I think that Coach Santoro does a great job of putting really good people in ways to lead. And one of those people is Brad Dillon. And I can't speak enough that Brad is such an underrated coach, in my opinion. Because if you just look at the guys around the 65 to 97 range at Lehigh, they're always producing, and they're always getting upside. And I think there's a couple things that he does really, really well. I think technically he's a guru. He's able to break things down and explain them in many different ways till a guy's able to connect with what he's saying. So, right, if we're talking about a high crotch and we all say, post leg foot up, he says it 4 or 5 different ways until it connects with the athlete. So I think he communicates pretty well, and they really they do a really good job of building that relationship and that trust. Where I can think about where before big moments in my career, kind of looking to Brad and Pat and trusting them, and John Hughes and trusting them when they say you're ready or this is what you got to focus on. Those positions we go through would end up coming in matches. I think about one with Robert Hamlin when he was wrestling in the Midland final we were drilling for Ben Bennett, who's an absolute hammer on top with legs, and we drilled a very specific escape out of a position that was Bennett's best position. And wouldn't you guess it, but then in that match, Robert was able to hit this cutaway 2 different times, and he won the match because of it.
That's great, Nate. That sounds like certainly they're doing their job getting you guys prepared. What do you miss most about college wrestling? You've been out of it for a few years. I mean, do you ever have flashbacks, good or bad, of your youth, I guess, or just what do you think about whenever you think about college wrestling?
I wish that I miss competing. So I really miss just like going in and there's no rules and you're allowed to just like go scrap, right? Like a good scrap on a Saturday morning, followed by like some going down to the diner afterwards was just like the best. So I really miss the competition side because I love competing in anything. It's a flaw of mine because sometimes we won't lay spike ball till I win. But so I really miss that. If I could change something, I think that one thing I would do would be even sell out more and work harder and be completely okay with I'm trying to run this path to be the best absolute wrestler I could be and focus on being the best wrestler I could be and not necessarily focused on trying to win a national title. And they sound really similar, but they're pretty different. So I think just focusing on maximizing potential and taking some pressure off myself to win. Because I remember when before I wrestled Thomas in the round of 12 my junior year, I was sitting behind back in the alleyways and the depths of the stadium out in St. Louis, and I was sitting there with Mike McMullen, and he said something that was like so stark to me, where he's like, if you think about it, everyone that really cares about NCAA wrestling is in Minnesota. Like, that's really it. So why do you put so much pressure on yourself? So I'd say probably just taking some pressure off myself and just competing and trying to maximize as good as I could be.
Nate, you mentioned missing competition. Are you a potential late sign-up to the U.S. Open this week?
That's a negative. That's a negative. That would be fun, but no.
Are you saying no? Or could you turn a negative into a positive, or are you completely ruling it out?
So you're saying there's a chance.
Yeah. My wife will kill me.
Nate, I wanted to ask you real quick. I feel like I've been wanting to ask you this for years, but you beat one of my buddies, my teammate Jack Deco, and I think the round before the blood round one year. I don't even remember how many years ago that was. But you guys had like a 0-0 match, I think, going into the third period. And, Jack Deco was like a D1 level running back football player. He's a super athlete. I've never really seen him get ridden out in college wrestling. But you just kind of, I don't even know if it was a float ride or what it was, but you kind of just clung on almost like a crab ride, and you just rode him out, I think, the whole period. I think that's how you won the match. And I think earlier that day, or maybe it was the year before, I don't remember, but it was at the NCAA tournament, Darian Cruz, before he won a title, did the exact same thing to my other teammate, Brandon Jeske. Both of you guys were just so competent at, just clinging on and riding tight, and no matter what those guys did, rolled around, stood up, put 10 different moves together, you guys just covered their hips so well. Is that something you both developed at Lehigh, or is that just kind of a natural feel that you had for top work?
I think that I had some natural inclinations to the top stuff. I think that's something where Brad was really, really good at evaluating like what it takes to win those high-level matches. And I think being a hammer on top, and one thing he always talks about is doing the work. So getting that weight over the guy's hand is really important. And I'll tell you what, I remember how nervous I was wrestling Deco because that guy was an absolute stud and a half. I think that from a perspective, this is something we teach at Team Renegades all the time, especially if you want to be a legger, if you want to be a claw guy, if you want to be a tilt guy, the key, first things first, you got to get the guy's weight over his hand and get him so you're dictating the top ride so you can isolate the bottom half of the body from the top half. And that was something that was my senior year, and I wasn't wrestling that great at that time of the year. And something Brad said to me back in the tunnels after I lost, he's like, listen, it's not going to be pretty, but your best position's on top, and let's go just be a hammer in our best position. Let's go maximize your strength and go win matches. And so that was a very a focus, because a lot of it's lift and return. You're going to have to lift and return a guy 3 or 4 times until you get that third or fourth lift and return where you can isolate and in and then really cover them.
Nate, looking at college wrestling, the landscape of it, if you had to make a big change or even changes, whether it's the rule set, recruiting, schedule, whatever it is, I mean, if you were the commissioner, what would you do?
That's a good question. I think I would put in a boundary rule and just make it a step out. I think that would probably be number one. I do love the college wrestling edge of the mat. Like, there's some, LaValle got screwed way back when on the edge of the mat with a crazy sequence. Am I remembering that right, Rob?
What was that? Who was he wrestling? Was it maybe Chamberlain?
Yes, right. And there's a great. So I think there's some really cool edge of the mat wrestling opportunities, but I think that I would just, at this point, just put in the one point. I think that I am very much a fan of, not hindering somebody's potential to get better in whatever they're doing. But I think that the recruiting is getting kind of crazy these days. I think the transfer portal is having some backfire that, from my point of view, I think that the more we can grow wrestling, the better. And a lot of people talk about that. I think that the growth is going to be from 2 opportunities. Is one, continuing guys that are going to the next level and shining a light on it. And what next level to me is the UFC. And the other side of that I think is absolutely critical is women's wrestling. So I think the more we can do that, the more we're going to continue to – we have a great product, right? The NCAA Wrestling Tournament is one of the best events that I've been to, and I've taken people to, and they've shared that. So I think, again, maximizing those strengths and focusing on those, and then also adding women's wrestling, adding a step-out role, and the more programs we can, and just keep promoting.
What about changes to the youth, junior high, or high school level? What changes would you make there?
See, I'm way more opinionated about that stuff because that's kind of the world I live in. I think that our youth in middle school over compete by 100-fold. If you look at a college guy, right? So the most everyone talks about in college wrestling, you make your biggest gains during the summer. And my theory on why that is because, one, the pressure of competing is off. So if I know I'm not competing, my mind and anxiety will relax. I know I'm not making weight, so I'm now, instead of going into a wrestling room thinking about how much weight can I lose in this workout, it's like, oh, I'm actually here to get better at wrestling today. And you pair that with the anxiety of competing being off, knowing that I've got XYZ coming to town or I got some tournament coming up. So I think that we over-compete. So if you look at our senior level guys, the amount of training they have versus the amount of competition is diametrically different than what the youth scene is right now. I think competing can be important for youth, but I think we do way, way too much of it. I would also focus on really pushing back the level of intensity it gets to. I think, again, if you really look candidly at it, not everyone has the best interest of your 10-year-old in mind. They are looking at how can they sell you that shirt? How can they sell you that backpack? How can they sell you that room? So I think that there's youth sports is an economy right now. And for me, right, my wife's due in April. So some of the things I'll think about as a future parent is what's that balance? And that's something we talk to our club and our kids and kids we work with of, hey, man, I think you'd probably be better with getting an extra wrestling practice that's focused around improving basic fundamentals than you would going and wrestling 10 matches and reinforcing all those bad habits. Because that's what happens when you compete that much. All you're doing is enforcing habits that you already have. And Rob and Tristan, as you can relate to, unteaching habits is way harder than teaching basics to somebody that doesn't know what they're doing.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's really a fine line because I think just our society in general, it's a win now or I'm going to try something else feel, right? So if a kid's not having success, he quits. So what I like working with is that kid that, you can tell he's real into it. Maybe he's not that great yet, but he's going to stick with it no matter what. Like those are the easiest guys to coach because you can really take it slow. They're going to listen versus the kid that's maybe good at 3 other sports and he doesn't win in wrestling because he's losing to kids that are cutting weight. Then he quits because I can just go play baseball or soccer instead. Like that's where we lose guys, and it's really tough.
So I just think that like something too that we can do better as like a wrestling society is my high school coach Jim Snyder was was really good at running a high school program, and he always talked about numbers. And one thing that I remember he talked to our high school team about is stop trying to oversell how hard wrestling it is, because you get the kid that's thinking about doing it, and now they're not, because you already have to deal with the whole singlet thing, and now you're dealing with these tough guys that probably can't make it. So I think that something that I love is in a lot of good programs are starting to do this. It's overstated, but having fun, and having fun doesn't just mean dodgeball and handball. I think that's an important part, because I love to play dodgeball and handball. But just what's the attitude going into the room every day? Is it this is wrestling, we're here to win, we're here to hit single leg, or is it hey, we're here to get better, we're going to have fun, we're going to joke, we're going to laugh, we're going to be serious when we need to be serious? But what's the attitude of the room like?
Nate, would you say, since you've been done competing and you've been relaxed, that you're probably more prepared for the U.S. Open this week than ever before?
I would say that I hit a really good pinch headlock on Joey Milano tonight. I hope he listens to this, and he knows that I hit 2 of them, and that was straight preparation for David Taylor when I'm going to pin him in the first 30 seconds. Because if it goes past that, I will die.
Well, he won't be at the U.S. Open, so I guess that means you're committing to the trials as well.
Well, I'm committing to winning the U.S. Open with 5 pinch headlocks, and then 3 pinch headlocks and getting David Taylor. Or I guess it will be Cox sitting out, if we know if Cox is going down or not.
That's why Lehigh is good, is because for 20 years you're told headlocks don't work, and then that's really their secret sauce, is they teach their national finalists how to hit headlocks, and no one's expecting them, so that puts them at the top.
All pinch headlocks, man.
Nate, if you come the trials, which are April or May, you might have dad strength by then.
So what is it? Do you know what the date is?
It's the first week of April.
So yeah, you could have dad strength by then.
That's why I didn't make the Olympic team.
Oh man, it's gonna be close.
Always screwing the little programs like Lehigh.
Dude, honestly, always screwing the little programs like Lehigh. I couldn't agree more.
Nate, here's my last question for you. This has been a good talk. What are your future short and long-term goals in coaching? Are you going to stick around the youth scene for a while, you think?
Yeah. I really like I love the youth scene. I think about some of I think there's some really positive impacts that can be made there. I enjoy working with I candidly, my favorite age group is 9 to 14. I really like that age group the best. I do like working with higher level guys, like one of the guys that I mentioned earlier, Joey Milano's in our club. I do love getting into the nitty gritty details of techniques and stuff, but I really enjoy that youth middle school age group. I'm planning to be involved for a while. Obviously, when my wife and I are starting a family, and as that changes, that'll change things. But I plan to be as involved as possible. Something she always says, that the nights I'm just pulling into my house now at 9 p.m. I have more energy these nights when I'm able to go coach than I do any other night. So I think that if I know you're out in Shippensburg right now, Tristan, and Rob, you're out in Pittsburgh, but out on the eastern side of the state, Team Renegades is doing some pretty cool stuff. It's a little bit different. It's a little bit different flavor than I think what the youth team's seeing. We have Coach Tyrone Willman. Ty wrestled for Penn State. Coach Dave Hoffman wrestled for BT, was an All-American there, Division I head coach or Division I head assistant coach for 14 years. And then you have Dan Hoffman, who's Dave's brother. You have TJ Demetrio. You have Zach Dahl, who wrestled for Pittsburgh, was a couple-time round of 12er. So we've got a staff that is pretty locked and loaded for a club program and a youth program.
No, anyone out east listening really needs to give these guys a try. I can speak candidly about Dave Hoffman. I wrestled for him at Bucknell. He's one of the best in the business, and I've known Nate a long time. You guys are definitely in good hands. You wrestled for Renegade.
All right, Nate. Well, we appreciate you coming on the show. You're going to have to go ahead and drive through my old neighborhood and check it out now that I know you're a Bluebell worker.
Yeah, heck yeah, man. I'll be down there tomorrow morning, bright and early, 8 a.m. sales meeting.
Slapping backs in the boardroom.
I'd say just go Mountain Hawks. Thank you guys for having me on. I just want to also just shout out all the coaches that I've had in my life that are still coaching me now. Talked about a bunch of them, but Coach Snyder back growing up, Coach Hughes, Coach Donnie Hooten, Jason Katz, my old man Doc Brown, Coach Kim Oberdorf. There's a bunch that really positively impacted me.
All right, and we just hung up with Nate Brown, former 2-time All-American for Lehigh and NCAA finalist, both me and Rob have good personal ties with Nate. We really appreciate him coming on. It's cool, Rob, to get some perspectives from some guys who maybe aren't current student athletes or even college coaches, just guys who were studs in the PA wrestling world and, still are involved in giving back to the sport, but also are able to share a unique perspective of, how they got to where they were and maybe what they've learned and what they can share with younger wrestlers. So we appreciate Nate coming on. That being said, that's going to wrap it up for us here at the PA Power College Wrestling Podcast. Thanks for joining us, as always, for Season 3, Episode 9. Fans, go ahead and give us a like or a share on social media if you would, to spread the word about the podcast. For Rob Waltko, I'm Tristan Warner. We'll see you next week.